Yeah. Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm good, Larry. How are you?
I'm good. Can you just share your thoughts about how do you balance, wanting to make a move to add depth, but not mortgaging your future with draft picks? And the second question is just some thoughts on what you saw around the league. What surprised you? What kind of raised your eyebrows?
Well, adding depth, I guess probably say it every year, but um, what's the cost of acquiring the player, and what role are they going to play for you? Ultimately, I like to think part of why we weren't very active this year at the deadline is we like the depth we have within the organization. Uh, you know, we have some good players in Grand Rapids, players that we signed last summer. Some of our young prospects that are playing there, they provide us good depth. So here, sitting at the deadline, looking at some of the things that we felt maybe areas that could help us, ultimately giving up this year a first or a second or a third round pick for depth. We're better off bringing up our guys from Grand Rapids for that.
Elaine?
Real quick, just to follow up, can you just give me any thoughts on what you saw around the league?
I got to get caught up with everything that's gone down. But it's certainly, I guess, it's you take note of some of the teams at the top that were very aggressive, and it looks like a real arms race. It's almost saying here our deadline is starting to look like Canadian junior hockey's deadline, where you got 4 or 5 clubs at the top just go throwing everything and getting everybody, and the rest of the league kind of standing pat. But certainly is interesting, and it's going to make it for everybody following the league, fans, media, all of us in it. It's going to be a very exciting right down the wire, all the way through the Stanley Cup finals, as to see how this all plays out.
Elaine, go ahead.
Steve, I know this team is coming off back-to-back losses against two elite teams, but overall, how much, Steve or Derek has talked a lot about the best addition, maybe no addition, because this is the group that has you still on a projector to make the playoffs. How much did that really weigh or factor into you deciding this is the group that has gotten you this to a very good spot, really?
Yeah, well, one, I think the atmosphere within the team, at least it's my understanding and my impression from as close as I can get to into the locker room, is we have very good team spirit. There's a lot of enthusiasm. You hear the players talk about how much they're enjoying playing together. So that's encouraging, and they have got us into a good spot here now. We've got a real good race, which is going to be good for our team down the stretch, and hopefully it works out that we finish the regular season in a playoff spot. I think that's great. Ultimately, a balance, for where we're at, an improving team that has a chance to make the playoffs here. It's like, okay, if we can make moves that help us get in the playoffs, but we're still trying to build. We're still we're not one of those top teams that's willing to give up, or at least I'm not willing to give up first round picks and top prospects to get in on some of those, rental players or high price free agents at the deadline. We measure, do we want to give up a pick for player X? And ultimately, to try and improve our team at this point, the costs, whoever's coming in, somebody's got to come out of the lineup, whether they're going out and getting traded or they're a healthy scratch, and that affects the locker room. But ultimately, trying to improve the team, and at what cost, and the things that we were looking at, or felt we could do, just to give up first rounds and second round picks and what we consider are good prospects at that for guys that aren't really getting, aren't filling holes. They're going to replace the player that's going to sit in the stands for them. So let's stick pat with our group, and we get injuries and whatnot, we'll go to Grand Rapids, and we feel those players are comparable to what we were able to, to do unless we're willing to give up our prime assets.
And my other question is just, it's been nearly 5 years since you walked into Little Caesars Arena and talked about the work you had ahead of you, getting this team back towards the playoffs. What are your thoughts on what you have been able to accomplish in that time?
Well, I think we have a reasonable, a decent group, and I'm going to be very conservative, but I think we have, a good group of young prospects. We still have a lot, we've got 8 draft picks this year, 8 draft picks next year, and all of ours moving forward. We're building a nucleus of young prospects that are going to be a part of this team. We're slowly seeing, some of those kids in GR, not only develop from junior and college and in Europe into good American League players. They're just slowly moving up the pipeline, and this year's team, Joe Valeno, Michael Rasmussen, who were drafted a few years ago, are taking on a bigger role and are continuing to improve, and we're slowly moving young players along. It's, as I said, and say it every time we kind of talk, it's taken time. And I do not have a set timeline for it, and I cannot give anybody one, and I wouldn't dare to do that. So it's progressing, and I'm pleased that it's progressing. Like everyone else, I wish it was going a lot faster, but and we're doing our best to expedite the process, but it's just taking time. But I'm happy with the group of kids we have coming along, and in our organization and our team this year. I'm really pleased with the play and the improvement we've made as a team this year. And we're competing for a playoff spot, and this last 20 games into it is going to be a great experience for our entire team.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Answer.
Yeah, hi, Steve. Just, having guys like Berggren and Edvinsson in Grand Rapids and the way they're playing down there, did that just lessen the urgency to make depth moves?
Yes. Like, they're playing very well along with several other the young guys down there, or over in Grand Rapids. We're really pleased with what's going on in Grand Rapids. We're really pleased with the development of our young players down over in Grand Rapids. I keep saying down there, but yeah. And then ultimately it's like, okay, we're going to have to give up a 2nd round pick for this player, or a 3rd round pick for this player, or they want this prospect. It's like, we can just we got our guys ready to go. Jonathan Berggren you mentioned, or definitely, Simon, if we need somebody to step in, a winger to step in, an offensive guy, we think Jonathan is ready to do that. We need a D-man certainly come up. Simon will do that, or any of the guys. And then it's not just them as far as depth. It's the Tim Gettinger's, Zach Aston Reese's as well. These veterans that have played NHL games that provide depth as well, and that we think, again, comparing to what we might be able to get, they can do the job as well, and we still are keeping our 2nd and 3rd round picks, believe it or not.
Also, just trading Costin, a guy that had difficulty cracking the lineup, but just was it important just to clear that cap space for next season?
Yes, not for this year, but certainly for next season. If in the role that he was being used, and it doesn't make sense to have a $2 million player. I really honestly have mixed emotions about trading him. Like, we brought him in last year, big guy, physical, but has some ability too. Just, it didn't work here for whatever reason. It didn't work. And thought, at this time, and he doesn't, he's a young player that wants to play and wants an opportunity to play, and just wasn't getting that there. So it's best for the player. It's best for us. In particular, we couldn't afford to have a $2 million forward not in the lineup next year, and so we're able to move him, give him an opportunity, and kind of changes the dynamic of our forward group. But we'll bring someone up from, should we need it, and when we need it, bring someone up from Grand Rapids.
Thanks, Steve.
Max.
I think you're at 11 forwards now, Steve. Is there a call up planned for this trip, or is it just going to be 11-7?
We'll go 11-7 tonight, and yeah, there'll be at least one player coming up.
Okay. And then you talked about Edvinsson. What have your impressions been of his season so far in Grand Rapids, and what's the balance been of knowing when it's kind of time for him?
Well, I think his season has gone very well. At the beginning of the year, we decided both with Jonathan and Simon that, and we discussed it with them, things we want them to improve upon and play get more ice time down there to improve in those areas. And both of them, for that matter, have been excellent. Their attitude, their work ethic, and their performance on the ice, they've continued to get better and better. And part of that is their will and desire to improve, and their willingness to kind of buy in, so to speak, on what we're trying to do and the reasons we have them in the American Hockey League as opposed to being in the NHL. So both of them have been really good. They're logging big minutes, and they're key players on a team, and our record in Grand Rapids has really improved over that middle portion of the season there. They've been a big part of it. They're playing big minutes and playing an important role, and it's only a matter of time before they're in the NHL and playing regularly. So overall, I think it's been good for our organization to have them there, and I really think it's been good for them. And again, sending them to play in GR this year wasn't necessarily about this year. It's about the next 15 to 18 years, and they're going to be really good players. And I like to think they're better players today, and I know they're playing a bigger role than they would have here in Detroit for the Red Wings this season.
Are there any areas you've been especially pleased to see the growth in with those two guys? Like, is there a part of their game that you felt like has really come along? I'm sure it's across the board, but anything really in particular?
Part of Simon being there was to run a power play, playing more offensive situations. And he has played in that, and I think he is more comfortable on the blue line on the power play. But ultimately, I say I'll go and watch him, and he's really an excellent defender. He's gotten more confidence. His closing of plays, his play in front of his own net, reading the play and when to box out and when to front, and reading the play in front of him, but knowing where everybody is behind him. Just his overall defensive play has gotten better, and is it with experience and confidence, but he really is becoming an excellent defender. But probably our biggest thought was we want him playing a lot of minutes and touching the puck and playing on the power play. But as I watch, I think, and that's probably the most important thing for a defender, is to be able to play defense. He's really increased in that, or improved in that area. So overall, I think he's been really, really good and worked at it, and it's going to benefit him going forward.
And then last thing for me, with your pending free agents, are there any guys that you're thinking you could agree beyond this year for going forward? Or are you letting all those go into the summer, do you think?
RFAs or UFAs?
With the UFAs.
Well, I think, I've spoken with most of our pending UFAs agents and just said, that I want to see how the season plays out, and I've got to see where we go with our RFAs, shorter term or long term, because those deals will impact what we can do with our UFAs. But ultimately, I like our entire UFA group. I think we'd all agree they've performed pretty good for us. And I'm not sure that we'll be able to bring everybody back. So we'll, in all likelihood, and things can change certainly, but our right now is kind of got to see where we're at with our RFAs, and then address very quickly at the end of the season our UFAs. In fairness to our players, they're good people. They'll want to know kind of for off-season planning where they stand, and we'll try to get it done as quickly as possible at the end of the year.
Thank you.
Okay.
Millsy?
Steve, you talk about kind of with these players, trading them and having relationships with them too. Can you share how navigating the human side of a trade and how that goes down and balancing the business side of it as well?
Well, situations can be different. In this case with, we traded Clem Costin this year. Clem and I and his agent had some discussions about, possibly trading him to where he could get a bigger role. He's a young player. He's trying to establish himself in the NHL. So there was a little bit more communication and a little bit more, I don't know what the right a little bit more upfront. This doesn't come as a surprise. Whether Clem or myself is real happy about it, neither of us really, but because we were hoping it would work out in Detroit. But there was a little bit more communication back and forth. Everything you're dealing with a veteran, not in this case, but a veteran with a family. And we did talk to some teams about their veteran who's been on their team for a long time, and are they going to keep them or not? And player's been a good player for them, and geez, if we have to move them, it's going to be hard for us. So ultimately, we have a job and do what's best for the organization. You try to be honest with players throughout the course of the season, where they stand, and at the end of the day, if you're honest, whether they like what happens or what you say to them down the road, as long as you've been honest, they get it, So we all get it as part of the business. It's performance based for all of us, and the risk for a player to be traded or not re-signed, it does happen. But try to be reasonably sensitive to the guys and still do your job.
Thank you.
Will?
Hey, Steve, just back to Simon for a minute. If and when he gets called up this season, what's the challenge for him in potentially jumping into the playoffs? Is that a challenge you think he's ready for? And I guess, how do you think he'd be able to embrace that challenge?
Well, I think Simon's a confident kid. He's certainly physically strong. He can skate. Again, he's played really well in the minors. I don't want to say you'll definitely see him in the NHL, but I wouldn't be surprised at any point to see him playing games for us here. And we'll deal if and when we make the playoffs. The coaches will decide who plays, and certainly rookies have gone into the NHL and performed regular season or playoffs. So again, he's a big guy. He skates. He's strong enough. While he's played, I think he could come into our lineup, and that may happen.
Thanks. And then a little bigger picture, a lot of comparisons drawn between your team this year and last year's Kraken team, just with the depth of scoring up front. I'm wondering, did you see them as a template for maybe how to win without bona fide superstars? And is that a viable path forward for you guys looking into the future?
Well, the plan isn't to avoid getting a superstar. Whatever your definition or our definition of a superstar is, but not so much in Seattle. But we did take notice of their team last year. They were they were tough to play against, and they were a very entertaining team, and it was a great story. But they did have depth. Ultimately, I think, when you look at Vegas won the cup last year, they had depth. They were able to acquire depth or into their lineup, and they were very effective. Every team that wins a cup you need depth, and you look at these contenders now, they're all adding pieces to give them the necessary bodies to have a long playoff run. You look at St. Louis's Stanley Cup champion team. They were a really good hockey team. Did they have arguably like a superstar if you're talking to McDavid, or they had really good players and a really deep team, but they didn't have like a McDavid or a Sidney Crosby or Nathan McKinnon, but they certainly won the Stanley Cup, and there's lots of ways to do it. You just have to have a really good team, however you put it together.
Art?
Thanks, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Great, thanks.
That's good. I'm going to give you a hypothetical to start this off.
Can't
If
wait.
Patrick Kane did not have the impact, significant impact that he has had on this club, how different would your sense of urgency be today, if that makes sense?
Well, I can't answer that. I don't know. I don't know what our record would be. Would we be a different team? Certainly Patrick has, ignited our offense, given us more, given the coach and given our team. He's helped our power play, given the team more, the coaches more options for our line combinations. Um, would we have done something else via trade, or I don't know what it would be, but we're very pleased, and we can look at it like that was our trade deadline acquisition, is acquiring Patrick
Thank you.
Kane.
Right.
But he's had a positive impact really on the ice, and you see the amazing plays that he makes, but he's been really, really good within the locker room too. Just his demeanor, his work ethic, his professionalism. He's been really good for our organization.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, he definitely is the missing ingredient, especially up front. I mean, as far as being an elite talent, it's amazing. How surprised are you that he has made such a seamless transition, considering the surgery he's come off of?
Well, again, and not having any players in the NHL that have gone through what he did, we didn't really know. What we did know was that he was in really good shape, that his testing was very good, and that our doctors were more than comfortable short term that he would be able to perform. And that was even before we got to bring him in and let him do the testing. So, coming in halfway through the season roughly is hard enough. But we didn't really have a lot of expectations. Maybe we thought, hey, at the very worst, he'll be really useful on our power play at the very worst, and be able to provide a little bit of offense. He's done more than that, and I think he's continuing each week getting more comfortable. His hands and his vision were there right from the start. For myself, just my experiences being out for extended period of times, it took a while just to get up to speed on things, just with everything. And he jumped into it very quickly. And now he's getting banged around a little bit more, and he's getting up and going. I think he's getting more confident and more assured that he can handle this. So he continues to improve.
My final question is about Berggren. If you call him up, if I understand the rule correctly, if he plays 4 more games, he hits 80 NHL games played, meaning he would have to clear waivers if you wanted to send him back to GR. Does that mean if he is called up that he is here to stay?
If he is called up, he would need waivers to be sent down, and after 4 more games, yeah. So theoretically, yeah, if he plays 4 in that 4th game, I think it's safe to say if we waived him, he wouldn't. I don't think he'd clear waivers, so we wouldn't take that chance.
So does that mean he's not stuck in GR, but you would rather see him get that playoff experience than do it here in Detroit?
Let's just wait and see how things play out, Art. Okay.
All right. All right. All right.
Well,
I
I guess
guess
I would answer. No, I'd answer your question. We're gonna, the Detroit Red Wings we're trying to make the playoffs. We're not going to keep him in the minors just and not play 4 more games so to protect him to play in Grand Rapids playoffs. We're going to do everything we can from this point on with our players to try and win games and make the playoffs. And if that means recalling Jonathan and playing, we're not going to not play him in the games to make sure he's available for GR in the playoffs.
great. Thank you, Steve. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Okay.
Ted?
Yeah, Art stole my thunder on all of those.
You got to get in the queue before Art.
I tell you, Steve, just following Art, that's never an easy thing. Here, the free agents you signed last summer, I mean, you got to be pretty. I mean, have they surpassed all expectations or what?
I don't think so. We like to think we watch these players, we know what they are. If we haven't worked with them before to know their character and their personalities, we've done everything we can to find out. Looking at it, I don't think I'm really, shocked by anyone. Obviously we just talked about Patrick Kane, just the uncertainty of coming off the surgery. Weren't really 100% sure what to expect, but with the rest of the group, I think of free agents, we're not really caught by surprise. They've all had a positive impact on us on the ice and off the ice.
Hey, these last 20 games, Steve, without Dylan for a while here too, what's going to be the key for you guys?
Well, we've had balanced scoring throughout the course of the season. Certainly this year, Dylan scored some extremely timely goals for us in games, and made some big plays at times for us that we're going to miss that. And he logs a lot of minutes for us. So we need the depth of or that balanced scoring to offset what he's missing. But ultimately, we need to be good defensively. And it's not just goaltending. We need to, our play for the most part recently, we've been strong defensively. And right now, without Larkin, it's going to be even more important that we're good defensively. And we need to continue to work at it. And that's collectively as a team. We got to tighten up in Colorado. Now you got as you saw, Nathan MacKinnon was on another world. Then he's pretty much been that all season in that game. It was oh boy, I don't know what we can do to stop this right now. But collectively as a team, we got to continue to get more solid defensively, and we've been working at it and we're improving at it. And this stretch here, it just to me makes it more critical that we're solid, sound defensive hockey team. We had we scored the St. Louis game. It was 6-1. Then we went into Chicago. We played Washington, and it was 8-3. They were tired. They're a much better team. St. Louis, a much better team than they showed in those games. We were able to catch Washington tired. But as you noticed in the Washington game, it's 8-3, but we got loose. We got sloppy. There's a lot of chances both ways. I would prefer to win that game, 5-1, 6-1, or obviously 8-1 is better than 8-3, but we gave up too many chances. And it slowly creeps into the game, and then it's even Florida and certainly Colorado. But again, the Colorado one is you got Makar and Rantanen and MacKinnon, and it's just oh boy. So that's hey, we got to be a strong defensive team, and we got to continue to work at that, and that'll be the key. In my opinion, that'll be the key for us going down the stretch here.
Hey, last one. Did you feel you were close at all today, or is nothing even really close when you came down to it?
Well, we as you know, we traded Klim, so we were kind of, if anything, trying to accomplish today would be, trying to add another forward. That would be the one thing we could do. We certainly did a lot of talking, close, in that, there's some tipping point to, do we want to give up, what are we willing to give up for that player? And you get to that point and it's we weren't willing to go beyond that, in all these circumstances. So, but ultimately, over the course of the last month, you kind of get a gauge of, how active you're going to be. Every now and then a surprise will come along, but I got the sense that as you're working around the league, it's probably going to be a quiet deadline for us. These are the things we'd like to do. But then you're trying to figure, okay, who can we get? What can we get? What is this player? What can we get? And I was oh boy, we can't afford to pay that. That doesn't make sense to do that for us. So then it's what, maybe we'll just hang tight and see if something falls into our lap earlier this afternoon, right before the deadline, and kind of kicking around a few ideas on and like I said, a replacement for Klim, but it's geez, that's an awful lot to pay for, where we think that particular player is going to fit into our lineup or how much he's going to be used. And it was what, we'll just bring up the guys from GR and keep those picks.
Gotcha. Thanks for this, Steve.
Yep.
Bob?
Steve, it seems like going back for years, there was always that one defenseman in Grand Rapids that had some significant NHL experience who was there for an emergency, like Brian Lashoff, obviously, for years. Last year, you had Stephen Camphor down there. You didn't really have that guy this year. Was that one of the appeals to getting a guy like Simic? And on the flip side, too, having a guy with that kind of experience in Grand Rapids should help them go on a playoff run, too.
Um, Yeah, not so much. Like we've got a lot of D in GR. And part of the reason like we didn't have the guys in GR, signed early, who do we got down there as our veterans? Brogan Rafferty, as a potential call up. And although he's been called up, I don't know that he's got into a game for us. But ultimately we had all these young defensemen down there. Simon and Willander, Wallander. There's a Willander in another organization. Wallander, Albert Johansson, Antti Tuomistu, Emil Viro's down there. A lot of young D's. So we needed spots for them to play. So that was how our roster was constructed down in Grand Rapids. And then ultimately at the deadline, when you're talking to San Jose, and we're trying to make a deal, part of it is, okay, what are the assets? But money gets involved too, as far as balancing out money and budgets and things like that. And so we're able to, where they're willing to do it for Simic. We're very familiar with the player. He has cleared waivers and he provides us with not only really good depth, he's a real good player at the American League. He's got experience in the NHL, gives us another player theoretically if we recall him or any of our other guys, potentially, because our team in Grand Rapids, they're I think second place today. I haven't checked the stats in the last few days, but we'd love for them to make the playoffs too. And if we start recalling players, we'd like to keep them strong. So Simic gives us some depth, not only at the American League level, but potentially as a recall for us as well.
Thank you.
Kevin? Kevin, I think you're muted.
Okay. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Speaking of development of the players, how much has the success, like recently Grand Rapids went on that 18-game point streak, developing sort of a winning culture, how much has that helped their development in your eyes?
Well, I think it's really important. Like you want, the better team you play on, the better players you play with, it improves you and as a hockey player. And we want them playing in the playoffs. We want them, we'd love to win a championship there. These are great experiences for young players. So we're really pleased with what's gone on in Grand Rapids this year. Our veterans have been excellent, and the young players are starting to play over the course of the year, play an increased role and having a real positive impact on the record of that team. So very, very pleased with what's going on in GR right now with the players and the coaching staff down there is, the whole team is going in a very good direction.
I wanted to ask a little bit about Sebastian Cossa too. Last year, when he was in Toledo, he started out, just average, but as the season wore on, he got better and better. And it seemed like this season he started to take off in the second half to here for Grand Rapids as well. Do you see that sort of spike in his development here?
Yeah, Kevin, he's getting much stronger as the years gone on. He's playing more games. So he's trending in the right direction. He's played, a bigger role, maybe gotten more games than he did early in the season, and he's earned them. So yes, he's progressing nicely. And he's wins and losses for goalies. Like the team wins, the team loses, but his record is he's really been solid in goal, and still a lot of work to do, but he's trending in the right direction.
And finally, I wanted to ask about two defensemen that are playing their first years over here in North America, at least pro hockey, Tremisto and Wallander. What kind of progress have they made?
Well, they've progressed really well. Both of them really good. They're obviously one's a right shot Auntie's a right shot. William is a left shot. Different players, but they're both big. Uh, Auntie's big, strong, physical, great shot, passes the puck really well. William, a little bit probably lighter, tall, lanky guy, really good skater, moves the puck really well. A little bit more probably active in the rush offensively, but both of them, not really sure what to expect, how they would do. They've worked their way into being regulars in the lineup, and as they've become regulars in the lineup, we have a lot of depth on D, so some nights we're sitting on really good players, and it's not because they haven't performed well. It's because it's their turn. We're trying to keep everybody involved. We got a pretty good decor down there of young and veteran players. But both of them are looking like NHL prospects at this stage. And the start of the year, we weren't really sure. Both of them coming in into the American League for the first time. Really pleased with both of their evolution or their development this year.
Thanks again, Steve.
Yep.
All right, last question will go to Carlos.
Hey, Steve, you mentioned you said if and when we make the playoffs this year and that you're trying to make the playoffs. You mentioned how you like how the team is, the vibe in the dressing room, how they're playing together. What gives you the most encouragement? Since I know you like predicting the future, but what gives you the most encouragement that the team will make the playoffs this year?
So that's why I got to be really careful with every word I say. I should have said if or when, and not if and when. And as soon as I said that, I'm like, oh no. And but if or when, Carlos. Okay, so there's no guarantees here. Honestly, it's going to be tough. We're kind of in a bit of a battle. Tampa made some additions to their team this year. A few of the teams that we're in the battle are sellers, so to speak. So you never know, but the Islanders are coming on strong. I'm not sure how active they were. I haven't had a chance to even look at it, but we just saw them play, and I thought they played really well against us. So we're in a battle for a playoff spot. Losing Dylan obviously doesn't help, but you know what? We gotta be better defensively, collectively as a team. We got to keep working on that. I do think we have enough. Our power plays, even without Dylan, our power plays should be effective. And we continue with our goaltending. Billy will come back here between with all three of them. We've gotten pretty good goaltending throughout the course of the year, and we'll need that regardless of which of the three is in net. But I've got it all down to we better be a better defensive hockey team. We got to tighten it up in all aspects of the game, and that includes not just defending. It's your play with the puck all over the ice. You got to be responsible with it, and that'll be I think the determining factor. But Carlos, we would all love for the Red Wings to make the playoffs this year. Ultimately, the reality is we're in the playoffs right now. Every game is important for us. Like every loss, every point matters. If we can get into a game and come from behind and even get it to overtime and get a point, you keep inching forward. So these are really crucial games. In the last 4 years that I've been here, we've been sitting here and trading out players at the deadline and just saying, okay, we're we'll get to the finish line. Well, these games are really important. So I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic that we can get in, and I will be disappointed like everyone else if we don't. But like I say, these are playoff games for us now, and we've got to elevate our play, and I'm very hopeful, and my expectation is for our players to do that.
Just one quick follow-up is you mentioned that this will be a good experience for the team, this playoff race here down to the final 20 games. Even if they don't make the playoffs, is there still value in them going through this experience of being in a tight playoff race? And if they don't make the playoffs, you guys don't make it, how much regret would you have of not moving a UFA?
I've thought about that a lot. When you sit around and you have all this time to yourself, you think about all these things. I don't have the luxury of looking back in a month from now and saying, geez, I should have moved this guy or that guy. Like if we weren't sitting in the position we're in, it would have been, it's an easier decision. But ultimately, with where we're at and the value in playing these games for all of our young players, for our organization as a whole. At this time it was like, we're sitting in a playoff spot. I can't go and just, and if I'm going to trade one of them, I'm going to trade them all. Like, I'm not going to just make the team a little bit worse. And ultimately, we looked at some things that, hey, if we move this player, we'll just bring this player into the lineup. There wasn't enough interest to really justify us doing anything like that. I could wheel out whoever it is for a 5th round pick. You'd be going, what are you doing? Like, why bother? So the value in keeping our players and trying to make the playoffs, to me, outweighed. And even if we miss out, we miss out. I'm not going to sit there and go, gee, I should have done this, I should have done that. Kind of made that decision. And then, last year we're in a similar spot. And my decision at the time was, as you know, was to trade our free agents. And this year opt to go the other way. And regardless of what happens, I'm not going to look back and say, should have done the opposite. You just got to, make your decisions and move on.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, that is it for today. Thanks everyone for joining us, and Steve, thanks for taking the time.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
Thank you.